Hello and how's it going? Welcome to the channel, and I am here for a top 3 list video for you guys. Now for this list video, I'll be going over some bands that I have some bias towards. Now this is a video that I thought about doing for a little while now, so I figured that now would be the right time to do so. And I think we can all agree that we have some bands that we take seriously sometimes, so that's kind of what this list is about. Now keep in mind, just because these are bands that I have bias towards and bands that I take seriously, that doesn't mean that these are my favorite bands of all time. Now, some of these bands maybe I'd consider favorites, but I would not say number one, maybe except for one of them. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the list. We're going to start off with the band Red. Now, maybe some of you are surprised or maybe not surprised that I have Red on this list. Yeah, definitely a band I can take seriously sometimes. They were one of the first bands that I did get into, so you could say that that is one of the big reasons why I have some bias towards Red, but I don't think it's so much that, to be honest. I think it's more about them being an underrated band. Like, I'll see like some people's lists of like hard rock bands that they name, and they'll name bands like Breaking Benjamin, Seether, Shinedown, 3 Days Grace, Saint Asonia, Skillets, Nothing More, Starset. I mean, bands like them. And I won't see Red on those lists sometimes. And I'm just like, wow, because that's something that can definitely drive me insane, because I think Red is a lot better than those bands, to be honest. I do think that Red is probably the best band that makes this style of music, this 2000s hard rock style of music. So yeah, and I think that they're the most unique in their genre, and yeah, I definitely think that Red is underrated and they deserve more recognition. Now, I've seen Red in concert twice. The first time was in 2013, second time was in 2016, and yeah, they definitely know how to put on a good show, but I am a little biased when it comes to Red. Just a band that does mean something to me. I believe that they, again, were one of the first bands I got into. I got into them shortly after Breaking Benjamin, and yeah, I definitely have some bias towards Red. I like Michael Barnes as a vocalist. The instrumentation, I think, is really good. And it's something that I do have to bring up, but maybe because Red isn't getting that same treatment or recognition as bands like Breaking Benjamin or Shinedown, is maybe because they're a Christian hard rock band, which is just absolutely ridiculous if you ask me, because I don't think that's a good reason to not like any band. I mean, if that's really the reason why, Red isn't getting the recognition that I think they deserve, then God help humanity. I mean, I'll just say that, but I definitely think that Red deserves more recognition for sure. So the next band up that I have some bias towards is, well, this one's pretty much no secret, but it's Demon Hunter. Yeah, I don't think any of you are that surprised that I do have some bias towards Demon Hunter. And for good reason, though. It's not like I don't have any good reason for, taking them seriously or anything. Because I know that there's some people that give me some flack for taking this band seriously, but you have to remember one thing. Demon Hunter was basically the first metal band that I gotten into, and think about some of the first metal bands that you gotten into. And not to mention, it's not like Demon Hunter is like a bad band. Definitely take Demon Hunter rather seriously sometimes, and again, it has to do with that idea about them being my first metal band being into. And I think about some of the other metalcore bands that I'm into, like Killswitch Engage and Trivium and As I Lay Dying. And I sometimes wonder, would I be able to get into those bands if I wouldn't have gotten into Demon Hunter first? That is a good question, because I don't know. And I think Demon Hunter is one of the most unique bands in metalcore. I think that they're one of the most diverse metalcore bands. I really like these guys. Now, I will admit, I don't like them as much as I used to. They were my favorite band for the longest time, of course, for those who don't know, for the newcomers. I mean, if you've been following this channel, you guys know that there was a time where Demon Hunter was a really big band for me. And I, sometimes will take them seriously to this day. And one, of course, that's because they were one of my first metal bands. And two, they deliver this feeling for me that very few metalcore bands deliver for me. Now, do I think that Demon Hunter is the best metalcore band of all time? No, but I definitely think they're unique and underrated. And another reason why I take them very seriously is, well, kind of the same deal with Red. Just the fact that I think that Demon Hunter deserves a lot more recognition, I think. I think that they deserve to be just as big as some of those bigger metalcore bands like Killswitch Engage and All That Remains. But yeah, Demon Hunter is definitely a great band and extremely underrated. I mean, this is one of those bands where I think that you should put them in your list of like most underrated metalcore bands or whatever. Now again, maybe the reason that they're not getting recognition is because they're in Christian metalcore, but of course we've already gone over that idea, so I don't need to repeat myself. But you know, and it could be because of the label alone. And what I mean by this is basically, you know, maybe some people see that Demon Hunter is associated with these bands that aren't very good and are kind of generic, like Fit for a King, for example. Like maybe they see that they're associated with like other Christian metalcore bands, and like they kind of just put them in that category. Like, oh, well, that's just another Fit for a King. Like, just act as if they're just another Killswitch Engage or another All That Remains or another Trivium or something, you know? Like, act as if like they're a part of that crowd, not the crowd of like Fit for a King and more generic metalcore. So yeah, that's why I do take this band very seriously, because they're already not getting a lot of recognition, and of course that's what you want for, you know, especially your first metalcore bands. That's just something that you want for them. You want them to grow and gain a big audience. And yeah, I do think that Demon Hunter is a very good band and very underrated. And Ryan Clark, I think, has one of the best voices in metalcore. So there's that. And yeah, definitely a band I obviously take seriously, but I already gave you the list of reasons why. So on that note, we're going to jump to the last band on this list, which is Rush. Now, Rush is probably one of my favorite bands, if not maybe my favorite band. I don't know. I really don't have a favorite band these days, because it really is hard to choose a favorite band given that there's so many great bands that I'm a fan of. But, you know, with Rush, I mean, they're an excellent band. I would say that they're the best progressive music band of all time. And the reason I say music and not just rock in general is because I genuinely think that they're the best band in progressive music in general. Like, I think that they surpass every other band that, you know, makes progressive rock or progressive metal. Because, well, I know some people might say, well, what about this band or this band? Or what about this band that formed like a few decades after Rush, you know? But what a lot of people need to realize is without those old school progressive rock bands like Rush, you wouldn't have your precious newer progressive bands. I mean, I would just say that I'm not really a fan of today's progressive metal or progressive rock or anything. I'm honestly not sure if progressive rock is even still a thing. You guys are probably going to have to let me in on that, because I just don't know. But with progressive metal, as far as, you know, 2000s progressive metal goes, Between the Buried and Me is probably the only band that does it for me. But yeah, I really dig Rush. Definitely my favorite progressive rock band, if anything. They've never really released a bad album, and that's quite impressive for how many albums that they've released, because they've released a lot of albums, nearly 20 albums. So yeah, I really like Geddy Lee's voice. I've heard some people complain about his voice, but I don't know. I think it's one of those voices that you just have to really appreciate and have a good mindset towards. And as well as Neil Peart's drumming, may he rest in peace. And yeah, the musicianship in Rush's music is definitely fantastic. And of course, you know, they have so many classics like Moving Pictures, Permanent Waves, Fly By Night, 2112, Hemispheres, Farewell to Kings, Signals, Power Windows, and the list goes on. I mean, they have a lot of solid albums. So Rush, definitely an excellent band. And again, maybe one of my favorite bands. So yeah, Rush is just one of those bands that I feel like every music fan should experience at some point in their musical journey. even if it's just 5 albums in their discography. Now, as for wishful thinking, I think, people should check out the entire discography. But if nothing else, at least check out 5 Rush albums, and make sure it's their best work as well, specifically talking about their 70s and early 80s work. So there you have it, guys. That is a list of bands that I definitely have some bias towards, and just bands that I take rather seriously sometimes. I'm sure this list didn't surprise a lot of people, but it is what it is. Let me know about some bands that you have some bias towards. Just let me know about that, and what do you think of my list? Do you agree with my list? Do you also have some bias towards these bands that I mentioned? Just feel free to let me know in the comments. So with that being said, thanks for watching, have a nice day, and take care.